Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. The overall mission of the Madison County, Illinois Circuit Clerk's Office is to file and process state and local court cases, collect fines and fees, maintain and certify court records, store court exhibits, clerk trials, and process all paper records on behalf of the courts. Our guest today is Circuit Clerk Mark Van Nida. Mr. Van Nida began work in Madison County 30 years ago as a guard at the Madison County Juvenile Detention Center. Later, as an administrator in the state's attorney's office, he earned a reputation as a capable and innovative manager. Following the death of Debbie Saltich, he was appointed Madison County Clerk in May of 1997 and then elected County Clerk in 1998. Having revamped the operation of the clerk's office, Mr. Van Nida sought new challenges in 2012 and was elected Madison County Circuit Clerk, replacing the five-term clerk Matt Melucci. Since his election, Mr. Van Nida has worked towards modernizing the operation of the courts. He has gained approval from the Illinois Supreme Court on electronic initiatives for both civil and criminal cases. He cleaned up a cluttered and overflowing record storage facility. This preservation effort has led to digitalization of millions of archived documents, including probate records of the 19th century abolitionist Elijah Lovejoy. Circuit Clerk. That's your old title. Mark Van Nida, welcome to Conversation.
Thank you.
So where have you found the difference, or what is the difference between the county clerk and the circuit clerk? Because most people probably have no idea.
Well, I'm the county clerk, and actually I can describe it this way. The county clerk is a project-oriented job. You put on elections. And it's kind of funny people say this. They'll always have ballots. Well, they don't. I mean, somebody is responsible for the logistics behind putting on an election.
Right.
So you have the project of putting on an election. Hard deadline. There's none of this business. Well, we're going to put it on a week later. No, it's a hard deadline. So it's an intense project that you.
November 3rd, that's it.
You have to.
You got to be there.
You have to work towards getting it done. But there's other projects. Every county board meeting, every month, the county board just putting together the county board packets and getting that information out to the county board members, to the press, to the public. That's a project. The county clerk also has a function, a role in the tax process. They have to extend the taxes, which is essentially figuring out individuals' tax bills when you combine the different taxing districts, the different, because we keep track of elections, we also keep track of the taxing districts. And so combining that and then giving that information to the treasurer so the treasurer can send out and collect the bills. A project. County clerk works until the project's done. Circuit clerk.
Nights, weekends, whatever it takes, Christmas.
Nights, weekends, and actually Christmas Eve. There have been a few years. Circuit clerk, it's more process. You process paperwork that comes in, and it doesn't stop. There's always an end to process the paperwork that has began, but it ends downstream. It ends downstream with the judiciary. So what I always say is I could work all weekend, I could work all night to catch up. The next day,
there's more.
So when you manage that operation, the trick is to tweak the process, to try to work on making it more efficient on a daily basis, working towards streamlining it, but it never finishes, it never gets done.
Now, the decision making about changing processes as a county clerk, that was more your decisions, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
And then changing processes as a circuit clerk, that's not your decision?
Right. Well, of course, the county clerk has to,
work with the board.
Has to follow
right.
the law and has to, in terms of funding and different things like that, work with the county board. So it's not entirely, that the county clerk is a clerk. They're not a
right.
dictator. They can't just decide things. But through the years, I gained a lot of credibility with the county board, and they trusted me when I came and said, well, this is what we need to do. We need new equipment. We need to get rid of the punch cards, and we need to come to optical scan. They trusted me to do that. Circuit clerk, you impact the judges, and the judges have to, ultimately, they're the ones that are in control of the courthouse and say, this is how this is going to work. So, if I come to the judge and say, Judge, I want you to change the way that you do your job, because it'll be more efficient for me. The judge says, well, maybe that's not my chief concern here. Maybe my concern is more with preserving the process, preserving people's rights, mm-hmm. Making sure that that my decisions ultimately hold up for in the appellate court or the Supreme Court. So it's inherently more conservative in the court system, and change doesn't come quite as easily.
Well, you are elected by the people of Madison County, Illinois.
Right.
But who do you work for? Do you work for the judges, or ultimately, who gives you direction? I work for the people, but my job title, my job description is written by the legislatures. By the legislature. This is the law, this is how you do things. And then ultimately the judiciary are the ones that interpret that job description. So, it's kind of somewhere in between. I try to follow the law. I try to move towards efficiency. Mm-hmm. I try to accommodate what the judges want to do because, of course, I really do think that their main concern is to get things right. So it's a delicate balance. In the introduction, I mentioned that you dealt with the Illinois Supreme Court, having to do with making some changes to the way things are done using electronics. Why the Supreme Court?
Well, the Supreme Court ultimately has regulatory control over how the courts work. And so they have a series of Supreme Court rules that lay out everything from how you go about doing electronic business, e-business, to how much your the regular
filing fee.
The filing fees actually are set by statute and by the county board. But I was thinking about how much you pay for if you get a traffic ticket, $120. That's how much they allow in Supreme Court Rule 5. So it's kind of funny, but they made that rule years ago, and even though I think on average in the state, people pay closer to $200 for a traffic ticket. Their bond is, I'm sorry, that was the word I was searching for. The bond is $120 because of Supreme Court Rule number 5.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you have an operating manual which actually comes from Springfield.
Right.
And this operating manual is not very flexible?
Well, it's not very flexible, no. Actually, not as flexible as I like. But on the other hand, that's the experience that I have now. I'm with it, and you go into it and you go, why can't they just do this? And then when you actually get involved in it, you realize, well, okay, wait a second. A person that gets a traffic ticket, for example, they do have some rights in the whole process. It's not just a matter of here's your ticket, pay your money. Extracting money from the citizens and sending it to someplace. It's a process that's supposed to penalize people who are doing bad behavior and prevent it in the future. Mm-hmm. So,
now in Illinois, just speaking of traffic tickets, the system in Illinois is different than it is in Missouri, isn't it?
Oh.
In Missouri, especially in St. Louis County, where there's been a lot of news about the courts over there, they have municipal courts. In other words, the cities set up their own courts, usually in city halls, and they hire some guy and call him judge. And it's almost like a kangaroo court in some people's opinion. In Illinois, what is the process? Somebody gets a ticket in Edwardsville or in Granite City or in Alton. What happens
all
then?
of the tickets run through the circuit court, and there's specific processes that they go through. Now, of course, I mean, if you get a ticket and you just want to get it over with, and okay, well, I was speeding, I want to pay my fine. I mean, they've made it as easy as you can go online to the number to paymyticket.com and pay online. But
using what, a credit card or something?
The credit card, you can use a credit card to do that. But if you come to court, there's a specific process which they go through, and of course it's time consuming and kind of annoying. But you can come there and go there and actually plead not guilty and ultimately get your day in court on whether or not to, right down to getting a jury trial for a traffic ticket.
So you can go all that way.
You can go all that way
to a jury trial.
It's going to take months, and it's going to take a lot of time and aggravation. But
on your part, though, I mean, on the part of the guy that got the ticket, unless he hires an attorney, he just shows up and talks to the judge. Right?
No, I mean, if you have to take off work, or if you have to come to the courthouse on multiple occasions and stand in line and wait your turn and all that. I mean, it's a lot of time. I mean, I kind of look at it like from the perspective of our customers more than from the perspective of the people who are paid to be there to do their job, which is to process these things. So, that's my job, to try to think about it in those ways. But yeah, your rights are protected, and they give you information on what you need to either go against the ticket and try to get out of it, or to get supervision, or to come and just pay your fine and go on. So supervision is kind of something that's not available over in Missouri. It's available in Illinois, and basically what it says is that if you keep from getting a traffic ticket, if you're over 18 and you keep from getting a traffic ticket for a year, you won't get points against your license, which will ultimately impact your insurance costs, car insurance costs. So, that's something that's available for people. The
relationship, now you were saying that you have a relationship, obviously, between you and the judges.
Right.
Because, your job is to make sure all this paperwork is properly preserved and properly presented to the judges in a timely fashion. What's your relationship with the state's attorney's office?
Well, the state's attorney's office, they're part of the actors in the judicial, in the whole system, and of course the defense attorneys in the same way. I mean, actually, the prosecutors and the prosecutors and the defense, or in this case the plaintiff and the defense, we try to treat them equally, and that is to give them timely notice. When something's filed, we make sure that it's in the system, so that when they get to court and when it's their turn, the information's there and they can act on it.
Mm-hmm. Now, you in the introduction, again, I mentioned that there was this huge backlog of data that was, I guess, still just in books.
Right.
What's the story with that? Where did this data generate from, and what made you decide to digitalize that?
Well, these were case files that were closed, and of course we have
from before the time of computers or computerization.
Well, so in some cases, actually, everything from 2006 forward was being scanned and put into the system. So Mr. Melucci had moved that far along, that they had a system where everything that started after 2006 was digitalized and in the system. But that left cases going back, all the way back to the turn of the century and before, that weren't scanned, weren't digitalized, and in paper form. And literally, there were files stacked high in the hallways because we'd run out of room to stack these closed case files. The county, Madison County owns the old Wood River Hospital facility. The first few floors, they have the health department and some of the other departments, employment and training. But up on the fourth floor the entire fourth floor was owned by the circuit clerk, and it was a repository of old dead files. But we run out of room, so we were overflowing down into the third floor, and they were using bathrooms. This is a hospital, so there are these rooms, these hospital rooms, and they had bathrooms, and so we had bathrooms with locks on the doors, and files stacked up in these bathrooms. Really, actually, I was shocked. Now, the good thing is that for every file, every case that's filed, there's a document storage fee as part of the total fees for filing. So this fund had built up pretty good. So I contracted with a company that was out of Mattoon, Illinois. It was actually an old Air Force base, hardened and concrete, and they used it. But what they do now is they process paper, they preserve them, they actually digitalize them, microfilm them, and then destroy the paper after it's been verified that we have a good shot of it. So I contracted with them and then began a process of shipping truckloads of these documents up to HOV in Mattoon, Illinois, and quite literally it was millions of images of paper that we captured on film first, and then electronically, so that they can be retrieved electronically on our computer system second, and then ultimately, after being verified, destroy the paper. So we're down to about a half of the fourth floor with documents that are older, that we need to preserve. Probate records, in particular wills, are never destroyed. The paper needs to be kept.
Oh, so these paper documents, once you've even photographed and digitalized them, they still can't go to the landfill.
Certain ones can't. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, certain.
What
certain
about
ones.
the others? I mean, just
other ones. Yeah, they're
manage
double
to
shred it and cross shred it, and then they go away. They're gone. So
you don't have stuff hanging out
so we don't
in the
have
bathrooms.
Well, yeah, and that's one of those things is that moving into the electronic world, on average, these files have considerable amount of cost through the years, just maintaining a space for them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you think about it. So making it into digital form saves about $70 per page over the life of that file when you get rid of it. So
that much.
That's a study done by the National Association of State Courts. That's the reason that we're trying to move towards electronically filing them, and then of course we do have that. We do have permission to do that. We have moving in our efforts to create electronically filing documents, and then that becomes the official document. And ultimately, we'll never have a paper.
There's really no paper.
We'll never have paper. Is the for me as the clerk, paper is the enemy of efficiency. For the judge, they like to read it on paper. So
they're old, I guess. Like us, we actually like to hold something. But I guess younger judges and judges of the future will be much more into having an iPad in front of them.
Well, that's the thing is actually being realistic about it. If your system, in some cases, it's easier to find it on a piece of paper, especially if you're used to looking in the same place,
right,
than it is to go in a computer, turn on the computer, look it up, have it come up on the screen. I mean, multiple steps are involved, and actually, it takes time.
No, I agree with what you're saying. I mean,
to be kind to them is that for them, it's easier for them to look on paper. For me, it's a hassle pulling files and putting them back and maintaining them. And again, my hassle is not the determining factor here. It's preserving people's rights and preserving the record. And that's one of those things is I will go back to that, is that talking about everything that's digitalized is actually put on microfilm too, film, because that's the state archives' preferred method of preserving the records. And if you think about it, what do you do with an old 78 record? What do you do if you've got a 78 record? Well, if you have a 78
if you
player,
have a turntable.
if you have a 78 turntable, you can play that 78. What do you do with a 45? The problem with the electronic medium is having the means to actually access that medium.
I was going to ask you about that, because there has been tremendous discussion about, okay, we put stuff this way, but only 10 or 15 years later, oh boy, they've just changed everything. Now we're storing it differently. So how do you, what do they call it, migrate? Or
yeah, well, I mean, that's
all this old data over here into this new storage
you convert system. It. I mean, we have in the 21st century gotten pretty good at converting data into new, newer, accessible means, but that film still, and there's some wisdom in it for the archive. Yeah. The film,
you can still read it.
After the apocalypse, we'll still be able to pick it up and hold it up to the sun and look in there. And if you have good enough eyesight, of course, I'll be gone in the apocalypse. But if somebody has good enough eyesight, they'll be able to look at it and read it.
Some zombie.
I'm afraid so.
Yeah. So, but you don't get to make that decision about this electronic transfer, do you? That's told to you by the Supreme Court.
They have
to decide that.
And I think that's the best reason for the Supreme Court at the state level to be creating standards and be creating rules, and that so if they have standards, it's the same whether or not you have a different system, whether you have a different vendor, or whether you're in a small county or a medium-sized county, or you're in Cook County. It's you have a standard for being able to, at least push come to shove, be able to access that information and push it to the appellate court or the Supreme Court or whatever.
So a clerk from some downstate small county could come into your office and recognize what you're doing because he's doing it or she's doing it the same way there.
Similar ways, yeah. I had so talking about the e-filing, the electronic business, and taking a huge step forward in e-business, so that making it so that people can file their civil files electronically and do that for free. That's one of the steps that we're taking. But I'm talking to a lawyer and he goes, well, do you have a backup on that? And it's like, I had to laugh. It's like, I mean, like, oh geez, of course, we have that we have that information backed up 2 or 3 different times. But that's part of the Supreme Court standards, that if you're going to move to electronic business, if you're going to move to electronic records, what are your backups? What are your plans? What are your means for disaster recovery? And God forbid, but disasters do occur. Mm-hmm. The courthouse could be wiped out by an act of God or by an act of terrorism.
Mad bomber, right,
and what is your plan for recovering from that? How do you preserve what you have? And so, of course, we have a plan in place. But one of the reasons we have a plan in place is because the Supreme Court, the smart person up at the Supreme Court says, hey, this is the standard. You have to do this.
Well, it used to be, and I don't know if it is now, but I know that large banks, financial institutions would take their records and they'd have like these deep old coal mine shafts and they would store records way down in there. Those are the days, you know, when the Soviets were getting ready to
Right.
attack, and
Well-
so they were afraid that afterwards they could, you know, open the shop back up and go back into business. But nevertheless, these deep, dark places are, I guess, are good places.
That's one of the advantages of this outfit out there in Mattoon is that they have this hardened missile silo that they're preserving
terrorists aren't going to
documents.
get to.
Well, tornadoes that's hardened against earthquakes. I mean,
Right.
yeah, you need to think about that stuff.
So we got about, I don't know, 3 minutes left here. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you want people to know about from the clerk's point of view, the circuit clerk's point of view?
I think I did. I mentioned that if you're a good law-abiding citizen and you just happen to get a heavy foot one morning on your way to work, we are working towards this. Working with our police departments towards getting electronic citations, and that doesn't mean anything to you except that police officer has a laptop in their squad car. And they're probably going to look up your license plate number on that laptop, and they're going to use your driver's license to look that information up. And in the past, or actually in the present, they would take out a pad and write on carbon, you know, a 5-part carbon copy.
Carbon paper, what's
They're
that?
actually using carbon paper and this carbon copies, but they're writing on a pad to write your ticket out.
Right.
Using the information that's on that screen. We've made significant movement towards our first police department is the sheriff's department, so that information will automatically transfer from the computer to a printer and print the ticket out.
So you can actually read it.
So that you can actually read it. And this is important for 2 reasons. The first reason is that if you're the poor soul that had the heavy foot on their way to work and they're late already, the average traffic stop takes 15 minutes for you to, with the electronic citation, it's much more efficient. It takes about 3 minutes for them to print out the tickets for you. So getting people on their way, it's a little bit of solace for that bad thing where you got that ticket. But the efficiency that's involved in that is even more important. Is that it's flowing electronically to the circuit clerk's office from the police department, and we're not going to make mistakes on a driver's license number. We're not going to make mistakes on somebody's last name. And again, if you're the lucky one where they made a mistake and it doesn't go against your record, that's great. But if you're unlucky and somebody else got a ticket but it came up with your driver's license number, you've got trouble and it's going to waste your time. So the efficiency of it coming through not only is good for the public, but it makes our process in the circuit clerk's office more accurate, more efficient. And so I'm looking forward to bringing the sheriff's office online before the end of the year, and then we're going to move very quickly through police departments, Granite City next, and then hopefully Edwardsville and Collinsville coming up before the end of next year.
Sounds like an efficient use of technology.
Oh, I hope so.
Thank you very much for being with us today. I certainly appreciate your time.
Thank you.